taken place, which makes it possible to record dance easily and share those recordings online with others in next to no time. These technological changes could make one wonder whether dance has become less ephemeral. To talk about post-ephemerality should refer to the discursive frame set, because in a certain way the live performance cannot be substituted. Has the exchange of cultural and other capital changed through the way dance is stored and transmitted online? How can we define the material and materiality regarding dance? Those are the three questions I will engage in my presentation. I will use the encounters of Beyoncé Knowles and Anne-Theresa de Keersmaeker to show a link between dance online and cultural capital related to artistic outputs. Both women are highly successful and are situated in different artistic fields, but seem to have a common interest in particular topics and the aesthetic related to them. One of my examples will be the infamous use of the Keersmaeker's movement material by Beyoncé in the countdown video, which came out in 2011. And the other example will be their engagement with the Louvre. So we stay with the Louvre. The comparison between Beyoncé's Ape Sheet video, which she made in 2018, and the Keersmaeker's site-specific museum's piece, Forêt, which she created together with Nemo Floret in 2022. In the later project, both artists engage with the Louvre and how its treasures can be culturally appropriated or are cultural appropriations. In both encounters, cultural capital plays a role, yet we see how there's a shift in what it means, especially regarding Countdown. I don't want to go into too much detail here because there has been so much published about it and so much written about it. So I just want to bring up a few positions towards it. So sharing moves with others is inherent to the practice of dance, as critic Alistair McGauley wrote in 2011, also referring to this incident. Hence, he felt the Keersmaeker shouldn't have been so upset because Beyoncé did nothing else as what one does in the dance profession. The incident, however, has shown that sharing dance online differs considerably from sharing dance in the rehearsal studio because wider audiences are reached faster. Placing choreography online makes, on the one hand, dance moves available to everybody for practicing. On the other hand, it allows uncontrollable access to it and jeopardizes the property rights of the choreographer. In the past, white choreographers, most prominently George Balanchine and Agnes de Mille, while working on Broadway, appropriated steps shown to them by their black dancers. With Beyoncé, the Keersmaeker incident, tables are turned around. Here it is that the movement material of the white artist that regards herself as part of the avant-garde has been appropriated by the black pop artist. Althea Crowd therefore sees Beyoncé doing what white artists have done before her. Quote, "It is easy and not unfair to say that Beyoncé erred in neglecting to seek permission from the Keersmaeker for using her choreography and in neglecting to give her credit before accusations of plagiarism emerged. But it is also vital to grasp how her failure to do either, along with her leveling of any distinction and between her pop culture and high art sources, along with her leveling of any distinction between her pop art and high art sources, functions as usurpation of what has been typically white privilege," unquote. Before the incident with Beyoncé, the Keersmaeker has shared her early choreography in full on YouTube. For example, one could see entire recordings of Achterland created in 1990 and Rosas Tanzt Rosas created in 1993. Afterwards, she restricted the access to her choreography considerably, and nowadays one finds mainly trailers of past and current choreographies online. So it's very hard to find for a long time period an entire choreography of the Kersmacher online. Instead, she initiated the fabulous Rosas Remix project in 1913, interestingly enough, 2 years after the countdown video came out, where she shares material and choreographic processes online and asks interested groups to produce their own Rosas Tanzt Rosas video. You see here on the screen how it is presented online. Here, similarly to the score publications, about which I will speak later, she shows the structure of the choreography, and together with her dancer Samantha van Bissen, they demonstrate the different movements which can be combined in various ways to constitute the choreography. The project has shown that she is willing to share choreographic process, but to her own conditions and with her own artistic aspiration. Ramsey Birds therefore still regards the Kersmacher, Forsyth with his various online projects, and Steve Paxton, who showed various materials of himself online, as willing to share in the comments without commercial interest. So he writes, quote, "The Kersmacher and fabulous Forsyth and Paxton were making emancipatory acts by making their discoveries freely available to anyone. These emancipatory acts are political ones because they challenge the deadening effect large corporations are having on dance knowledge as a common pool resource and by encouraging new ways of thinking and living." Unquote. The Kersmacher not only counteracted the theft, in quotation marks, of her movement vocabulary with the fabulous Rosas Remix project, the Kersmacher also published a series of scores right after the incidents. Although there is nowhere a direct claim made that they are the result of the incident and that they were being made to guarantee her ownership of her work. Those scores take an interesting place amongst possible forms and function of scores. They share certain features of scores by postmodern dance makers such as Trisha Brown. So you see the complicated floor patterns, you see notes, but the Kersmacher, they are not her personal notes she made during the creation process. Rather, they are notes that show a breakdown of the structure of the work afterwards. So they are made afterwards, long after those pieces were produced. So the issue seems, yes, I want to somehow secure an ownership of my process, but at the same time, it's also impossible to perform the works from the scores. And the scores are kind of mixed media. They are recordings of Kersmacher to demonstrate how she produced the work, but at the same end, those are then the interviews she does with Jerich are then printed out in writing. So you have both, you have a recording, demonstrating and explaining process, and you have the whole thing then in writing, and you have a few reviews of the work mixed with it. But what is really interesting, Kersmacher made those scores together with philosopher, performance maker, and musicologist Bojana Travic. Travic compares those scores to critical editions in music. Critical editions in music were made in the 19th century and used source material such as different autographs of a musical composition to create an edition that was more clearly than others to show the intention of the composers. Often those editions were called monuments. So that's Denkmäler in German means monument in English. They were supposed to contradict the ephemerality of music with something as solid as a monument. They also justified musicology as a research area which is in its aspiration not unlike science and archive studies, and shifted the musicology away from aesthetics. Musicology was supposed to gain more prestige that way, and of course more scholarly funding. So one is wondering why Trevich makes this comparison and what this comparison does imply. So are the scores the ultimate monument of de Keersmaker's processes, and also different from those monuments of tonal art? You cannot perform the work from them. So that's the kind of difference, and you see a shift away from the work as entity, like a musical composition you can play from the score. Here we have with the Keersmaker the choreographic process laid down in a critical edition, but not the work as such. We don't know whether there was a loss of capital income occurred, or whether sort of the Keersmaker gained larger popularity by the countdown video. Nevertheless, we deal with two kinds of cultural capital here, and Crowd wrote, quote, Beyoncé, re-embodied of Keersmaker's choreography, just represents a clash between different types of dance economies. The unhurried reproductive economy of the avant-garde versus the speed-up reproductive economy of popular culture, unquote. The Keersmaker here and elsewhere situates always her approach to choreography and choreographic material and the practice in the avant-garde. She refers to certain ideas of high art, and she's not unlike Balanchine or Stravinsky, and says it's always very, very hard work. You have to be very serious about your art, and you must understand what you are doing. So also with the Fabulous Rosas Remix project, she prefers schoolgirls in Flanders or elsewhere to do this, and emphasizes this is non-commercial, almost as a counterpoint to Beyoncé. But the different approach to cultural capital has also encompasses also other aspects. So coming back to the Louvre, in the two projects both women made about the Louvre. So we have here the Ape Shit video of 1918, which is actually quite fantastic. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And the Foray project by Keersmaker. And of course, it's difficult to compare a site-specific work with a music video. But nevertheless, Keersmaker, and I think I've shared deliberately those on purpose, those two images. Keersmaker creates a typical postmodern site-specific engagement with a particular museum. So she takes dance out of the black box, which we have since the 1960s. Dancers walk through the Louvre at different parts in the galleries. They perform. A musician has created a soundtrack which is played from a ghetto blaster, and the audience can never see the entire all the parts of the choreography. You can always go to certain sites and see part of it, and the moves are copying what is to be seen in the pictures. But differently from the Ape Shit video, they are not questioning what is actually hanged in the Louvre in terms of images, and how are those images cultural appropriations and particular reflections of those who has been looked at as the cultural other. So Beyoncé's approach is quite more questioning, okay, what does the art in the Louvre actually represent, and what does it say about a kind of the way European culture represented in museums like the Louvre identifies itself in comparison to other culture. Christian Cruini, who is a philosopher and comes from music. He's a professor of aesthetics at the University of Arts in Stuttgart. Has also published a series of interesting materials on dance, and he has published an article in English in Performance Journal where he comments on the two pieces in the following way, quote, "We could say that the Carters," referring to Beyonce and Jay-Z, "succeeded in turning this relation around. Rather, their performance being framed by the powerful cultural space, meaning the Louvre, and the art it exhibits, they reframe the space and effect a kind of kittornment. For the Kersmacher and Fleuret, on the other hand, this is impossible. No matter how much they struggle, it seems they notice too late that they have been framed and there is no getting out." So coming to my conclusion. So here are 4 questions. So where's the cultural capital situated between higher art and pop culture? So we can say the Kersmacher is a kind of um, um, reinforcing traditional cultural values, while Beyonce is questioning them. And also in terms of decolonization material, we can say Beyonce goes here one step further. Then my final point is, what is the difference between material and materiality? And I found also an interesting source in another publication by Grüni, which is unfortunately in German. It's called Das Nachleben der Künste, the Afterlife of the Art. And Greeny comes back to Adorno here with a sort of distinguishing between material and materiality. And ever since I returned to my native country, I'm somehow a bit puzzled that you're still encountering Adorno absolutely everywhere. But I find it quite helpful in terms of material and materiality to apply his distinction, because he would say the material of an art is actually the components of the artistic practice, which would be, with regards to the Kersmaker, a sort of the way she generates movement, the way she organizes movement in space, for example, floor pattern, the use of the Fibonacci sequence for the number of dancers who enter in a piece, and how you can then shift and change movement phrases, perform them retrospect, perform them with different body parts, and so on and so forth. The body could be looked at the medium, but if Adorno had a kind of a difficult relationship with the body, and the materiality is then what is a sort of what is created from this. So it is the online presence of dance, it's any form of recording or score, but it's also institutions and discourses. So all of it creates a certain materiality. So in other words, our discussion on the topic creates also a particular materiality of dance, as have done previous discussions, as do the forms of capture, the various viewpoints one can have. And at this point, Greeny brings up the question, how should we think about terminology, and makes a link to Rosalind Krauss, who often referred to some of the terminology also rather as toxic waste than as useful. Okay, so this here I want to stop with my presentation. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, final point is the bibliography. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks so much, Renate. Really interesting presentation. Thank